Mary I believed it was her role and her job as queen to reform England back to its Catholic faith and to its relationship with Rome that it had in the reign of Henry VIII, the start of the reign anyway. And in her 5 years on the throne, she did this through her religious regime, and she managed to execute over 300 Protestant heretics with the help of Reginald Pole, Archbishop of Canterbury. So this is a question often asked by historians: was the religious regime of Mary I successful, or did the burnings actually become counterproductive and actually reinforce Protestant propaganda rather than unite the country under Catholicism? Perhaps the first historian that's relevant here then is Fox and his Book of Martyrs, which was the first book and historiography to suggest that actually Mary I's burnings and execution of heretics were so unpopular in England that they were counterproductive to her cause. My view when regarding this question is that the burnings were counterproductive. Fox's Book of Martyrs, interestingly, focuses on Catholics and their eyewitness accounts. The fact that then the book is so evidently Protestant and evidently propaganda against the Marian campaign suggests that it can't have been productive if Catholics themselves were willing to speak up against it. We've also got evidence such as letters from the Venetian ambassador in 1557 suggesting that when he ended up leaving England in this year, the public mind was more than ever irritated by Mary's regime. We've also got letters sent to sheriffs and bailiffs in that year asking them why they hadn't carried out executions, as well as Sir John Butler being fined for the same offence and Stephen Gardiner refusing to burn people in his diocese. This is all evidence of the fact that the public were not fond of Mary's regime, and therefore it must have been counterproductive because in fact Mary was making more enemies and dividing her country rather than uniting it as her regime was supposed to. I think the reason for this was Mary didn't have enough support from the church due to the fact that after the dissolution of the monasteries, which was confirmed under Edward's reign, the church simply didn't have the resources anymore. The fact that the burnings were so unpopular and caused Protestant propaganda more than they caused an inherent love and unity for Catholicism suggests to me that Mary ended up actually putting a historic stain on the Catholic Church and its reputation, one we still see today, and therefore enforced that her regime was counterproductive. Historians such as David Loades are quick to suggest that Mary's regime actually reinforced and sparked Protestant propaganda and gave anti-Catholics something to dislike. He suggests that all of the executions were actually wasted. I would definitely agree with this. If you look at how quickly England returned to Protestantism under Elizabeth, it suggests to me that Mary can't have been too successful due to the fact that her burning scared people off. Bernard also suggests that officials would help ease the heretics' pain. People seemed more sympathetic towards heretics than Mary would have liked. Professor Scarisbrick, in one of his lectures, suggested and confirmed the fact that Mary's burning regime made the Catholic faith stained by history. However, historians such as Duffy suggest that the rejection of the burnings were actually in light of the Enlightenment. He suggests that evidence given by Fox was only given after people came to the realization that the burnings were horrific. He also suggested that the burnings were only counterproductive in certain places of the country because those were the places where Protestantism was more popular anyway. Conrad Russell also suggests that the burnings were productive by suggesting that if Mary had had more time, she would have managed to restore England to the Catholic faith due to the fact that the burnings were slowing down by the time that she died anyway, suggesting that she had actually managed to succeed in her regime. Therefore, I would conclude that the burnings were counterproductive. I don't agree with Duffy at all. I would suggest that Fox's influence is what made them a stain on the Catholic reputation, and I understand his bias. However, I think that the Bunnings did no more than fuel the fire of anti-Protestant propaganda. People disagreed with them at the time, despite it being somewhat normal to execute heretics like this, and people even fled the country. This was because the church lacked backing. It didn't have the wealth to enforce a reformation of this kind. If Mary had more time, then perhaps she would have been successful, but the fact is she didn't, and Fox managed to get there first.